lonely playroom. We hear no prattling voices, and the toys go untouched. Two boys, Peter and Marty, play alone. Time is stopped for these children because they are victims of a severe emotional disorder called autism.
Welcome to Out of Words, a podcast about being autistic, mental health, and life beyond the script. Today we're skipping the small talk to discuss from Nazis to Manic Pixie Dream Girls, autistic history and culture. Just a bit of a trigger warning for this episode because it is going to be heavy, probably heavier than a lot of our other episodes. It's also going to be lengthy. We're exploring kind of culture, our unique community, but there's going to be like themes and some talk that may be triggering, I think, to some autistic people. So please proceed with caution. If you need to skip this one, please do. My name is Kitty. I'm here with my co-host today, Philip, again. Hiya, Philip.
How's it going?
We're just two autistic friends, really, and we're here to ramble for an hour, maybe two. I did say unscripted. For those of you watching, you'll probably realize that I've got like about 100 notes here. They are badly formed notes, but it's just to kind of keep up with some of the dates and things that might skip my mind. So yeah, it's still unscripted, unedited.
I'm totally unscripted. I really do nothing for this podcast except I just like
say stuff.
I just comment and make jokes about Kitty's research. Really, that's all my contribution.
Well, we're using the words research loosely, by the way. And I meant to bring in the books with me, which there you go, absolutely unscripted. I will put up a screenshot here now of some books and relevant references.
Book there if you want to throw that up. Do you want to show that?
I'm not going to be talking about that today.
Right, sorry.
So
I just thought you were recommending books in general.
No, for this episode, dumbass.
Can you see the research I've done? Don't even know what books you're talking about.
Actual, like, further reading and research and citations will be on the screen now. If you're not watching and you're just listening to this, we will have links and some info up on the about part. So go to there and click on things and copy and paste some things if you want some further reading about today's episode. So yeah, unscripted, as you can hear, as much as possible. So yeah, today's episode, as I said, it's going to be quite detailed. We want to do this. This is going to be lengthy. There's no other way around it. There's going to be lots of, I think, subgenres and categories throughout this that we talk about. If anything pops up that you would like a further episode on in the future, there will be so much to talk about. So please do comment wherever you're listening and let us know. We'd love to hear from our audience in that respect. I do know myself that when looking into this, there were so many things that like we're going to be talking about so quickly and briefly that could really do with a full episode in itself. So please do let us know if anything particular pops up when we're talking. So to get straight into it. So we're going to be talking about, as we said, the history and culture of being autistic, what that means for us today, what it's meant historically. I guess from like shame to pride to diagnosis to identity and kind of what is next for the autistic community. I think this is a particularly big topic of conversation at the moment while we're, in the recording phase of this. This won't be released for another few weeks, but there was a recent discussion and articles from Ep2 came forward saying, regression kind of the spectrum and it being too broad. So there's a lot of conversation around that at the minute. How could the spectrum be too inclusive? And I think that's really a good place to start, I think, at this. And it's kind of, we're starting really in the middle because obviously the spectrum is a relatively new thing, or how we view the spectrum, I suppose, is a relatively new thing. For those of you at home that maybe you're not autistic or maybe you've not really aware of the kind of newer ideas of what the autism spectrum is, I think from, we went from a kind of a linear sense, from how society viewed being more autistic or less autistic.
Yeah, it was a scale rather than a spectrum. It was like how autistic are you? Like rather than you are, whereas now it's you are autistic and these are your support needs. Like.
Yeah, and it's kind of the way they kind of changed it a few years ago was to experts were kind of like, do you know what, we should be looking at this more like as a pizza slice, because every autistic person has different traits or has different weaknesses, for lack of a better word, than other autistic people do. So there's various elements on that, and you'll be up and down on each of those scales rather than one linear line. We're not less, we're not more. So I think it was very, yeah, I don't think there was much divide really in the community when that kind of came out recently, where it was like, I think if anything, it showed that we should not be listening to one person when it comes to autistic research and how to be autistic and how a community should be. I don't think we should be listening to one expert. I think that's all we really got from that whole debacle. I don't think there was any rift really in the community. I think for the most part, the way the spectrum is currently, we all see it as a positive. I personally think that the way the spectrum is now compared to how it used to be viewed brings unity within our community itself, that we're all one, and that we should be absolutely uplifting certain voices within the community who
definitely
historically had less of a voice than others, but that's other autistic people's job to do that as such. And that I just feel that it brought unity rather than the separation.
And I used to like it takes away because it used to kind of like grade us in a sense that if you were low support need in terms of now we consider people high or low support needs. Whereas before you would have been, are you high functioning or low functioning? Are you a good autistic or a bad autistic? It was essentially how that would play out. Whereas now it's just like, no, we're all a group of people and we have different needs. Like, and it's also it's a more accurate way as well. Like, like where we had this talk recently in work, and it had the depiction on the screen in terms of like the neurotypical brain against the autistic brain, in terms of the neurotypical brain in terms of the different measurements of cognitive functions, whatever. It's like a gentle wave in terms of where they are, whereas an autistic brain's kind of zigzagging all over the place.
Yes,
we're really good at some things, and we're really not good at other things.
Profile, I believe it's called.
There you go. Yeah, spiky profile. Yeah. In
I
other words, neurotypicals are just boring cunts like this.
You're just here to, like, every once in a while just point out that.
Yeah, pretty much.
We shouldn't be fighting in-house. We should be fighting with neurotypicals.
We should all direct our hate outwards
exactly
at the rest of the world.
That's healthy.
Yeah.
And the spiky profile thing is interesting, but I do feel that, like, a lot of neurodivergent people feel that about themselves, but also it does, it's a good way to kind of picture the spectrum as a whole. And I've heard this said time and time again, that some autistic people feel this way, and I definitely feel this way, that I don't feel like I'm good at the small things in life, like the things I probably should be good at, the easy things. I find
I put it that I'm not good at adulting, so I describe it.
I find that I like the easy stuff hard and the hard stuff easy. I mean, not all the time. I mean, obviously, like, I'm no fucking brain surgeon or anything, but there's just like some kind of complex, weird things that I'm just randomly good at. But the easy stuff, the day-to-day living, no, appalling. I guess. Not good at it at all. Like,
like my clothes will sit in the dryer for days on end before I put them away. Like, but like I can, like in work, I can like analyze data quicker than anyone, and like
But some of us will struggle to do buttons or tie shoelaces. It's and it is quite interesting from that point of view. But I don't think within the community there's much discourse. Maybe I'm wrong. If anyone feels differently, if you're autistic, please do comment below. I think the whole thing that came about was just like, it's too inclusive, that now it includes too many people. And look, I don't think identity or diagnosis or whatever way you want to phrase it can be too inclusive at the end of the day. But like, I think breaking autism up into constant subcategories is just a bit absolutely fucking pointless at the end of the day. It's just a waste of time. It rips apart the community, and
and
historically we've seen that's a bad idea.
Like, what's the risk if someone who's not autistic believes for a bit of time that they might be for a bit, what the risk is they start being kinder to themselves or something. Whoa.
Yeah.
How could society survive that? Do you know what I mean? Like,
and like, I mean, for those of us with lower support needs, especially in adulthood, I don't really care. I don't see myself as having Asperger's syndrome, and I've never seen myself as that. I personally just see us all as one. And obviously he was a fucking loser, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Like, fuck that Nazi, but
fuck all the Nazis.
But I just, it is a spectrum, but I see us all as one, and I think the spectrum really brings about unity. Yeah, so kind of just from there to go on, and I am going to say Asperger. How do you do? We'll talk about the pronunciation first, because obviously if we were American we'd be saying Asperger.
Asperger's is what I thought.
Asperger,
no, Asperger's.
Asperger's, yeah.
Asperger's is what
I tend to kind of mix a couple of things.
Yeah.
So forgive
but again,
our...
Yeah, well, he's a Nazi. Let's mispronounce
whatever.
his name.
Yeah,
Fuck him.
who cares?
Fuck him.
Yeah, but forgive our pronunciation. But I'm not doing the Americanized Asperger. That's just kind of a bit odd. But yeah, another fine example.
The Asperger thing is very funny though.
It is, yeah.
Funny.
But it's another fine example of, why our existence should never be based off the experience or expertise, and I use that loosely, on one person. Never. I think there's this
and it's also because it's not it won't be honed in on a one person that has displayed a level of understanding of it that's higher than anyone else. It'll be the idea they're putting out is palatable for society in some way.
Yeah.
And that's why we were, pathologized for so long, because it's easy to kind of, people like judging other people.
Yeah.
It's a
But I think I just want to point out, because I think for a lot of non-autistics in particular out there, you probably have heard his name and think that this man had created autism. Obviously no one created autism, but even discovered it. And like, we can put that down to several people, and obviously the internet didn't exist at the time. People didn't know what other people were doing. It was a wild time. But like, just to say that even if it was that he first discovered autism and he did loads for autism, even if that is true, we should not be basing our existence off one expert, particularly when that expert isn't even autistic themselves. And I think that's a good point to make. So yeah, to talk about Hans a bit, it's
his name Hans.
Hans.
I didn't know.
Hans. That's what did you think his first? Did you think he had no first name, like Cher?
I didn't know. I didn't care. I didn't know. I don't know why I find it funny that.
Why is that funny? Hans. That's a perfectly normal
Asperger's
name.
Man. That's
okay. Now
anyway,
now you just sound American. I don't know which is worse here. What's going on? I can't believe you didn't know that. What kind of autistic are you?
Well, I didn't care enough to know. I just dismissed him as just a Nazi who I didn't need to know it more about. So I never bothered learning his name.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, there you go. Now,
I don't know why it's funny that it's Hans.
Now I'm questioning myself. I'm pretty positive that's his name. It'll be hilarious if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty...
just like comments all over this video. It's real name's Dieter or whatever.
Dieter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So oh my god, I'm looking at my notes now. So yeah, he did not create autism, was my point.
No. God created it. No, I'm joking. We're not religious. We're not religious. I'm joking.
So like, there's this whole thing as well that like, that goes back to kind of that time as well, of the Asperger's time, of that autism was only like a boy thing. Obviously we know that's not these days, but the time of when Hans was looking at children as well, a lot of the time he was looking at very, 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 very particular cases, and that's fair enough. Like, I'm not blaming anyone for that. We're talking about a time when, at least, look, I know we're making loads of jokes here, and we could easily demonize one person over the other, but there's a lot to be said. There are some positives. Some things came about pre-Nazi era. And we'll look in depth on that as well, because there's another person that we're going to be discussing as well. But the whole idea of, I think, that that still exists today, of autism being a boys thing and autistic boys, I think kind of does go back to Asperger's. And from what limited knowledge people have now, that maybe if you're not autistic in particular, the limited knowledge you have is probably like, oh yeah, he had male patients. And I think that's still a very idea that we have in 2026, that no autistic women exist.
I would suggest as well that the main people researching this were men as well, because at the time there wasn't a lot of room for women in these fields. So if it's a male dominated field, they're going to identify more with the traits that they're observing in boys rather than girls.
Yeah. there was a couple of books that I was reading kind of in preparation. I was reading them anyway, but like kind of took some notes in preparation from today. One of them being Neurotribes, and then there was another one, Asperger's Children. And as I said, I will put those citations up just if anyone for further reading. Absolutely suggest both of them. And it was interesting reading Neurotribe because I think it was written around 2015, but it didn't really it went more in the positive view of Asperger's, I think. And look, there's a lot of things that obviously happened in Nazi era that we will never really, really, really know about, and a lot of evidence. The jokes that we're making now, a lot of things have came out more so in recent years, in very recent years, that would point to that he was more of a Nazi and more involved than people would have assumed. I mean, I don't think there was any way of getting away from it unless you physically moved at the time, which I do understand from that aspect. But reading Neurotribes, I find it quite interesting to read a book pre knowing what we know now. And look, I will say that his family did believe that there was like very little evidence to suggest. So like, I believe he had a daughter and she was all like, no, my dad wasn't, and she's going to think whatever of her dad again. And I get that. So like there was, relatives that came out later and said, no, he wasn't involved. And then reading Asperger's Children, which again was only like 3 years later, a different story emerged through that. And kind of like to discuss a bit the history and the terminology. Obviously, we're talking about the war here, so we're talking in the 40s, and the kind of notion of Asperger's syndrome didn't really come about until later. Asperger's himself wasn't really into titles. He did start to notice particular traits in children. At the time, people were kind of looking at calling it childhood schizophrenia, and that was still very much being used. And this notion was that it was like extreme, it was rare, it was tragic. And we had people like Leo Kanner that believed this kind of narrow view, and that also like a lot of people believe that you could only be autistic in childhood. That it was a childhood notion that adults didn't really inflict it of it. And then later we had things like the Spectrum being published, this kind of narrative by Lauren Wing, but still there was these notions of us having no empathy, So like this no empathy thing has been a very, very long, I suppose, one of the main running traits throughout time. Even things have changed. I think still in 2026, a lot of people, it's only really now, I think. I mean, I'm starting to see some professionals kind of speak up against this no empathy thing, but really only in the last couple of years. And when I say experts, I don't mean people in the autistic community. I mean people that people actually listen to, people that are writing papers, people that are like psychologists or psychiatrists, this whole no empathy thing. And I will say from my personal experience of empathy within the autistic community, if anything, I see hyper empathy, and I'm sure Philip will probably agree with me.
Yeah,
that it's
definitely. Yeah.
Like, I understand that the issue is communication, and that neurotypical people cannot see our empathy maybe in the same way that we're processing it, in the same way that we're showing it, and we're slower processors at the end of the day. So our empathy might not be even noticeable to us until a later stage. And I just know from so many people, and I know it's memes, and I know there's jokes made about it. It's like no empathy, and it's like and it'll be some joke about autistic people like caring about inanimate objects. And it's not to say that we have like preferential, over like inanimate objects or some kind of consumerism, like our things and praising and loving our things, but we do grow huge attachments to people.
Oh
and
yeah,
things
and even
animals,
and even the because the justice sensitivity piece is a widely accepted autistic trait. Like, what else would that come from if not empathy? At the end of the day,
yeah,
like that's why we're so sensitive to injustice, because we're empathizing with the people who are suffering from that injustice.
absolutely, yeah. And but I suppose from like a pathologizing point of view, if you want to put it, that us having that sense of justice isn't really under a trait. So I suppose that can easily be dismissed. But like, let's be real here. Like, we're here to talk about our lived experiences, not just us as autistic people, but the many, many autistic people that we do know.
Yeah.
And we do know that the justice sensitivity is a massive part of our community, and hyper empathy can be a massive part as well. And hyper empathy can be very dangerous. You know, it sounds like it can be something lovely and something beautiful, but it can be nerve-wracking. It can destroy autistic people. It can be something huge anxiety where it makes an autistic person really not want to socialize or like be in hostile, not even hostile environments. When I do think that an autistic person, when they're in that do experience hyper empathy, they can literally walk into a room and you can just feel it. You can just feel everyone's emotions faster than everyone else can. And I think that also just ties in with this thing of like, you know, us not being, again, this is like very narrow traits, as in I'm using trait in the broader sense and not the medical sense, if that makes, you know what I mean? Like, because these are things noticed in the community that it's not that we can't lie, but we have an intolerance to bullshit. And so walking into a room and feeling all this emotion can be really, really, really overwhelming. And it's a really difficult thing, I think, to explain to someone that isn't hyper empathetic.
Mm. Yeah, no, we're very sensitive to like the vibe in the room.
Yeah,
and that
is
from,
really good.
Yeah, like we're like,
yeah, basic way to put it.
There's any kind of tension, we're like, you know, what's going on?
Yeah,
and it's hard for us to and I think often the human response is to try and pretend it's not happening and hope that it passes. Whereas I think we're so hypersensitive, we can't do that. We're like, okay, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Why is everybody being weird? What's like, where's all this tension coming from?
Yes.
So yeah, vibe sensitivity, is that on it?
Vibe sensitivity, yeah, I like it. Yeah. But definitely, like, it would be my experience, I think, within work settings, within the group that we run for like peer support for adults, that just every autistic person I've met, that like I don't know, I've yet to see anyone with a lack of empathy, a lack of maybe empathy that a neurotypical person can read or understand. Yeah, absolutely. Next, I've kind of had some notes here on kind of moving on from that, and like, as I, you know, we want to dismiss some stuff in that, and that was a very important aspect, I think, to discuss and dismiss and go calling bullshit on the whole not having empathy thing. Another part of our very recent autistic history, and I would say it's still prevalent today, that we want to kind of call bullshit on, is ABA. So for anyone that doesn't know, that's behavioral therapies for autistic people. And at its base core, it is abuse. It's like the same as conversion therapy for gay people. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people, particularly Americans, because it seems to be used still quite a lot, I think, around in different parts of the US.
The Yanks are fucking backward and everything. Like, I mean, of course it is.
Now, in fairness, there will be a lot of people now disputing what I'm saying, and they're probably listening and getting really angry. This is not to call out parents who maybe have had their children in the past in some ABA programs. Look, when we know better, we do better.
Yeah, if you're just a parent, you're just trying to help your child. Like you're going to follow the advice of people you're perceiving to be experts. Like if you're, you know, when you're not one, you're just like seeing your child struggling, you don't know what to do, so you're like, oh.
Yeah. So ABA kind of came popular in the 60s and 70s and still used right up until the 90s, early 2000s. It came in and out of fashion, but to be honest, it was mostly in fashion. But at its base core, and I know there's lots of people, again, probably ABA deniers or lovers or whatever, screaming at us right now while listening to this, that now ABA these days is different. ABA these days has changed.
Like, we do have quite the wide audience, so there's no doubt, you know, going to be loads.
Well, I don't know. Well, we haven't really published yet, so we'll see once we're online properly who is listening. But yeah, this came about. Sorry if I have the name here somewhere of the ABA.
In terms of celebrities, I know Keith Duffy from Boyzone is a big proponent of ABA.
Are you serious?
No, I'm not joking. Yeah,
he's a son. Does he, or a child?
He's a child. I thought it was a daughter. It could be son, but I thought it was a daughter. But I remember he kind of talked it up a bit on Blind Boy's podcast a few years ago, and Blind Boy had to come out and say that he doesn't support it and all that. But
great.
He was just letting Keith Duffy share his experience, because apparently his daughter was non-verbal and put her ABA, and now she's verbal. So they're seeing this as an improvement. I can understand why, but at the same time,
ABA at its core, like in the 60s. So I think the name I have, again, my scribbles are terrible. The guy that created it, I can picture it. I can't. Yeah, I'll put his name on the screen for those of you watching at home. But the guy that created it in the 60s, like at its basic core, it was just abuse. So it's, encouraging someone to change their behavior, to act more normal, to be more neurotypical. And that's what it is at the end of the day. It's like, oh, you're making that stupid noise because you're autistic. I'm going to stop you from doing that. And I'm going to do shock therapy. I'm going to like physically harm you. And it's like, it's treating children like dogs. That's what it is at the end of the day. And I know, again, that people are screaming at me, no, ABA is different these days. I'm like, so I'm sorry, we've just
we know Kate Duffy's watching this right now and is like really annoyed.
But like we've switched up abuse. We're keeping the name, or we're keeping part of the name sometimes. We've just switched it up slightly. It's still abusive.
Yeah.
It's still conversion.
Yeah, it's still just continuing the pathologizing autism and treating it as a problem that needs to be fixed rather than just a difference society, that needs to be understood.
Rather than put in place the adaptations that are needed. And I'm not like, I understand that, again, parents go into this because they think it's best practice, because they're told it's not. I hope now in 2026 in this country you're not being told it's best practice, because it isn't. It is abuse. It is abuse. And I will scream that forever from the rooftops, and I don't really care about that, to be honest. But again, this is not about blaming parents. It's not even about blaming professionals. Even experts in this have there's so many experts that, like, even that I've met, that have like, you know what, when I know better, I do better. And we go off the best research from years ago, and then when we realize, no, actually, this is so wrong, then you just stop it, and then you just learn. And that's what being human and being an expert in any field should be about, for any patient, for any client at the end of the day. So yeah, there's going to probably be a lot of ABA defenders out there. If you do have a different viewpoint, comment below. But again, to go back to what you were saying, because I think that's a really good example of a kind of a parent going, well, it fixed my child. Firstly, there's no cure for autism. We don't want a cure. We think it's actually creepy that there's such an obsession around trying to cure us, because that's just eugenics at the end of the day. That would just be killing us. You cannot take my autism out of me. It is huge. It is me. It's my brain. It's my literal fucking brain. That would be to kill me. You can't, like, I would not exist without it, because I am autistic. And it's, you'll hear that, like, this cure my child, or this stop my child from doing this certain behavior. All that you've done is shame your child. And again, I say this with the kindest of intent. All you've done is shame your child, or your client, or your patient, into not doing something because they're going to get slapped, or they're going to be told they're stupid for doing, you know what I mean? Like, what? Why would we do? We're not doing that to any child. Like, it's not like,
it's even from a parenting perspective, it's quite an old school approach to parenting. Of
that. It
should all be, it's that whole strict parent morality thing that children are these animals that need fucking.
And look, even if it's something simple and you don't think it's dangerous, at the end of the day as well, I do find, and I find this with everyone, I find this with like a principal I'm not going to name, but just to point out that even people that should be experts don't seem to see the difference between autistic children and autistic adults. And even in 2026, I think that autistic adults are often dismissed. We're not listened to. So, like, if you talk to autistic adults that have been through ABA, a lot of them are so fucking traumatized. I feel really, really lucky that I've not had to, I've been shamed throughout my life, absolutely. I've wanted to mask, I've wanted to hide who I was, things like that, in a very kind of normal autistic way, but I haven't experienced the abuse of ABA. And there's so many autistic adults now, and that is why we're screaming from the rooftops, because people are traumatized. People are really, really, really traumatized, and they are now like in their 50s, 40s, 50s, and they're like, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am because it was beat out of me. Whether you're physically beating a child or where you're mentally beating them down, it's abuse. It's just abuse. When we know better, we do better. And to say that something is cured or fixed your child, if you're using the words cure or fix, firstly, you fucking totally missed the point. Secondly, you don't understand that, like, the same way that neurotypical children grow and change, autistic children grow and change.
Yeah.
I'm not the same fucking person that I was at 5.
Yeah.
I'm still autistic as fuck.
Yeah.
But my things have changed. I have adapted.
Whatever change you're observing in your child has been through ABA, that's just they're responding to a piece of trauma they've gone through. They're not.
Yeah.
They haven't been cured or fixed for anything.
And you have, like, even if we were using that as an experiment, you can't, like, that, there's no control method there. Like, what are you basing this on? You have no idea why your child is no longer oh, my child now eats more food, my child is doing less dangerous stimming, or whatever the case may be. How do you know that without the ABA that wouldn't occur anyway? You have nothing to base it on that the ABA has actually changed your child's development in any way whatsoever from childhood to adulthood. You just don't. You're basing that on zero. And at the end of the day, it's abuse. And it's particularly abuse if you're using words like cure or fix, because it's just wrong. It's just, we should know better in these days. But that is actually a topic that we were going to do, I think, a full episode on.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to cover on ABA. So
Yeah.
through the 60s and 70s, that kind of ABA came about. Unfortunately, today, that type of conversion therapy is still popular. As I said, there's a lot of people in the autistic community, a lot of autistic experts coming out going, we need to control this. There should be laws against this. It doesn't matter that ABA defenders are saying that the ABA today is different than the past. It's still abuse. So yeah, kind of just to go back to the past again and back to kind of Asperger's, and we talked about, I briefly had mentioned another person called Leo Kanner. Both were kind of working with patients at the same time. And I know I joked earlier, like, oh, there was no internet. So like people often attribute like autistic research to just Asperger's, but obviously there was other people throughout the years involved. But at around the same time, Leo Kanner was also working with patients and noting particular traits in the same way that Asperger's had noticed. So let's go back to my notes here. So like Hans, just kind of talk about him for a little, go back to very, very basics here. He was born in Austria in 1906, apparently gifted, eccentric, all the kind of things I think you would usually assume. He started working with children and he wrote his paper on autistic kids, I think it was 1944, I think 1943, I think it was 44 when it was actually released. And on first glance, when you start like looking into something like this, like, look, no one is pure evil, no one's pure innocent, no one, everyone is a mix. And I know we joked earlier, and on first glance I can see how he was viewed so highly, especially at the time, kind of taking on board these children, wanting to help. We have to remember what era it was as well. Disabled people were not, of any sort, were not looked well upon. He seemed almost helpful and new age, I guess, at the time. So, we have to come at it from that aspect as well. Let's be realistic. This was a time of eugenics. Even just before the Nazis, people in society didn't view disability in a good light at all. Later then, when the Nazis came into power, disabled people, including autistic people, were the first to be euthanized, kind of as a precursor to the camps and to killing all the Jewish people. Because I suppose, even though like from what I gathered, not many of disabled people were actually gassed. A lot of them were killed in various ways. A lot of them were just allowed to starve in hospitals. People knew, like, the Nazis knew they wouldn't be missed. Autistic people, disabled people in general, people with intellectual disabilities in particular, weren't going to be missed. And it's horrible, but it was a sign of the times. Even families kind of thought that if they let their loved ones die, if they let their children die, that it was kind to them. And very much, straight away, the Nazi regime were obviously like pushing that narrative, society was very much led into that, but society had already been in that, like, let's be realistic. It wasn't all the Nazis coming in going, we're doing this, and society, there was no pushback. There was very little pushback. When they started firstly killing off disabled people, a lot of it came down to money. The Nazis realized, hey, we're spending a lot of money on all these like autistic kids and disabled people. Let's not do that. Let's not, like, why are they in hospitals and homes and everything else? Like, so a lot of it did come down to that. And families were easily led, as I said, that like being dead would be better off for their children. So as I said, massive trigger warning for all of this. So because of that, the clinic that, obviously the Asperger was working in and doing all these like apparently amazing, like, brilliant things and loving to like the children, and, people did see him as a good person. And pre-Nazis, yes, there was some of that. I do believe that, I have to believe that by looking at his work, that he first intended on something positive to come from what he was doing, and he was noting these autistic traits in children. And just to go back to the kind of terminology, there was still autistic was still not being used. So autistic seemed like autistic behaviors was a term. Someone could have autistic behaviors, but they weren't calling it autism or being autistic as such. And later, obviously, we know that Asperger's syndrome became a thing for like a certain grade of autism. But even at the time, Asperger's wasn't really using that terminology himself when he was working with the children. But there was some good to come out of his research. Even just the fact that Asperger's kind of looked at autism being lifelong and going into adulthood. That might seem so minor now, but at the time, like, no one really cared. No one thought about that. He did look at autistic adults. So, that is something that came from his research. And really, like, a lot of people look back on his work now and they can see the idea of the spectrum starting even then. So he did have, without really focusing or calling it one or particular thing, people can look back at his research and see that now. So, I know we can put a negative or a positive spin on it. I'm not planning to do either. I'm just going to give the straightforward facts. There's a lot of things that were lost in the Nazi regime and were lost to history and lost to time.
Yeah, it should be noted as well, like the Nazis were notorious for destroying any research that didn't align to their worldview.
So when they took over, they came into his clinic. He had very little. I will admit that I'm sure he had very little say. He could have quit his job. Yeah, could move probably. Yeah, he had more, at the time than a lot of people, obviously, in society. Being a doctor, he would have had more.
I think if we're being as generous as possible, he is at least compliant.
He is. So at the time, a lot, this is the funny thing. I mean, I suppose like we cannot take his family's word for it later. Like oh no, like
they're always going to defend it.
Long relatives saying of course, like no, I don't think he had anything to do with it.
And does the Nazi apple fall from the Nazi tree? We don't know.
A lot of his colleagues were outright for the Nazi regime, and he stayed there. The end of the day, I think a lot of people are like, no, he stayed for the kids. He stayed to protect them. He did think that like they were worth living and all this kind of crack. Like, so I don't really know. Like, I will say that when they first started killing disabled and autistic kids, at first they kind of went, I think, as the Nazis did, they pushed the boundaries. So they went for the most disabled people in society that no one would really care about, or try to convince families. They even, as far as I know, I'm not sure what year they did this in, but they did this like survey, but it was almost to get like society, I think, to sign off. They did a survey basically asking like the parents of autistic children, like, if hypothetically we were going to kill all the disabled people, what would you think? Like, and look, I know that sounds extreme and weird, but honestly, a lot of parents said, well, if you thought it would be for the best for my child, if you thought they're never going to progress or they can't, if they're really sick, then so accidentally people kind of signed off in that way. There was this like, kind of survey thing done. So look, that's just the way society was at the time, and people easily fell into that trap. So in the beginning they were killing children and adults who were very disabled, but then as time went on, they were just killing everyone. They were just killing all the disabled people. They were killing people I did read this quote, I'm not even sure he said it, but people that were just slightly annoying, as in like disabled people who were just a bit irritating. And there were horrific ways that they were letting them die. They were purposely giving them TB. They were letting them.
They were carrying out experiments essentially.
They were. Then that all led to carrying out experiments on them. Now, did Hans Asperger have any doing or sin in this? As I said, some of his colleagues were Jewish and they had to flee. So the clinic completely changed. The Nazis took over. A lot of people, defenders of him, will try to say that he stayed for the kids, that he wanted to protect the kids, and that he tried to push this narrative of like, actually no, a lot of autistic people can be very useful. Now, I still think that's a harmful narrative. Like, I could understand if he was trying to play them at a certain game, but we do know that there's like different levels.
That's overly generous now.
There's this whole thing of like Aspie supremacy, and that's why I don't like Asperger's aside. As a fucking Nazi, as a man, and I don't want to say that I have low-level autism or Asperger's syndrome. I don't want to use that terminology because it's associated with him. But I also think it's good that we got.
You're definitely not low-level.
I do. Depends what day it is, and I think that's fucking vital to understand as
Oh
well.
yeah. There's some
You can-
days where I'm like,
But you can like low level. I think for those of you that don't understand as well, when people say low level needs, we mean low level compared to other autistic people, not compared to neurotypical people. I think that's a very, very important point to make. And it's an ever changing thing. Like from year to year, like we're not, again, autistic children aren't the same as autistic adults because we all grow and adapt in different ways. We all take knowledge from the world. We all change our opinion and our mind and things. We're not that rigid in our mindset that we never fucking change. And likewise, our needs change. Our autistic needs and traits change as well. They do. So that's why we can't really rely on things like numbers and things. But I also think to get away from this whole Asperger's kind of, even after this fucker was long gone, that like left over this thing. I don't know if you noticed this years ago in our community, and we still have a bit of it now, but we're definitely getting away from it because we're getting away from the whole Asperger's syndrome thing. But we had this whole Aspie supremacy, as it was called, where I know there's a lot of memes and a lot of jokes about it, but we did have a small portion of the community who thought they were the good autistic. And that's the idea he had, and the idea he tried to lead with the Nazis. Now, whether we think he was doing that to play the Nazis a little and just try and save people, or if he actually believed that, oh no, my little geniuses, my kids, my little geniuses. That's like the idea and the notion he had, that there was good autistics and bad autistics.
Yeah, and it's important to understand what they mean by good autistic. They mean
smart, useful.
Well, they mean can contribute better to capitalism
than
other autistic. And that, I think, is important because
despite what wanted to save money.
Yeah, and lots of the Nazis were committed capitalists, despite what's some right wingers pretend to paint them as.
Yeah.
And that's why also why they wanted to get rid of so many disabled people, because a disabled person's ability to contribute to capitalism is more limited in lots of ways.
Yeah.
Unless there's accommodations, whatever, like put in place. So it kind of does relate back to that as well. Specifically, the good autistic is contributes more to capitalism.
Yeah. I do fully believe that on recent discovery that he was not there to protect the kids. He was there protecting his own interests, and I do think that he would fall into the regime like everyone else, like most of his colleagues there at the time had.
Even most like Germany, in terms of the culture of Germany at the time, they were in like a genocidal mania, similar to what you'd see in the culture of Israel now. Like they like their culture was just fucking sick. Like let's just keep it real, like it was.
But we do see, as a result of that and this whole Asperger's thing, we do see definitely in the 90s anyway, we saw this Aspie supremacy thing. And whether I think we're getting away from that name, at least. Even like I know there's loads of jokes and memes about it, but it's this idea of like it's an autistic person being first ashamed of being autistic and then going, well, I'm not that autistic, or I'm only a little bit autistic, and then that can lead down this road of like self-ableism, and that self-ableism just leads into fucking overall ableism and the community, and it divides the community because, again, it comes back to being on a spectrum, but being one community, and that, okay, some of us have different support needs, but we're still autistic. We're still the one community. We shouldn't be littling each other. We shouldn't be going, oh, I'm the good type of autistic. And whether you're using that phrase or not, I'm the good autistic, if you're using anything to do around Aspie or Asperger, it sounds like that. I'm sorry if you don't mean it to, but because we have that very recent history where parts of our community were divided, that's what it's going to sound like. So I'm really glad we're at least getting rid of the terminology. There's always going to be self-ableism, and
I mean, I think even a good example of that is that Elon Musk refers to himself as having Asperger's and not being autistic. And do you want to be like that fucking loser?
Yeah, exactly. And society views him different to other autistics.
Because he's really contributed to capitalism with it.
Yeah.
He's really invested those apartheid emeralds well.
Yeah. So just to explain kind of why this man kind of irritates us, and hearing his name is quite irritating because there's still a leftovers of his work in a very bad way today. And I know that can be interpretation of what people saw his work as and everything else. So we can't just blame him for that, obviously. So yeah, as I said, that survey was done. It was the 40s. The clinic was taken over by Nazis. Everything was changed. I will say again, the families didn't really think the survey was real. They thought it was this hypothetical. But I do, some of them were still probably, I think, hoping that it would become a real thing. Yeah, so he always viewed these children as like his little scientists, and I think that's a bit of a gross narrative. It's just some selfish shite, really, to be honest. And I know, again, his daughter later claimed is innocent, but yeah.
What would she know?
But some families did, in fact, during the whole process of autistic people and disabled people in general being killed, some families did, in fact, ask for that euthanasia to happen, and I think that's important to obviously note.
But again, like I think, like go back to that sort of
It's a thing at the time.
sick genocidal culture that was prevalent at the time. I think that's also reflective of that too.
And do you know what? I'm going to give this family some leeway as well. If even if they had a slight inkling of what was about to happen across Germany, do you know what I mean? Like what was about to happen, which is across the world with the Nazis in general. I don't know. Even if they decided, maybe they were thinking, I don't want any of my children living through this. I don't want this to be happening. So I don't know. Like, there could have been somewhat of that just happening because of the times as well. So yeah, he was trying to, apparently, according to some people who quite like Asperger's, obviously they believe that he was trying to push this narrative to the Nazis, the Nazi audience, that like the difference with autistic people was a positive thing, and he used his case studies to talk about strengths and capabilities of autistic people. But again, Hitler was more just concerned with the financial burden, really, of the hospitalization and everything else. So they carried out a lot of death orders, and then when it came to autistic people and people with incurable conditions, as it would be noted, there was some closed door meetings had throughout Germany and Austria to kind of teach clinicians about this program and what was going to take place and what was going to be happening. There was official recorded deaths within this kind of euthanasia program, and there's like obviously non-recorded deaths as well, and I think there was a precursor to it. But then when it became an official thing, there was like closed door meetings. They were training clinicians in what ways to go about killing the children and the adults, and like these children were kind of just marked from the beginning, and they were sent off to a specialist children's ward. Now it is said that there was a small group of people who would be signing off papers and deciding the factor of which kids were sent off first. And a lot of people do believe that, I think it was 7 people on this board, if whatever we want to call it, board of killers, the signees. And some people
board of genociders.
Yeah, some people do believe that Hans Asperger's was actually on that board himself. That it depending on who we're going to listen to, there is some evidence to suggest that he actually had a sign off.
He had an active role in.
Yeah, very, very active role, as in signing off. And look,
but even if he doesn't, he wasn't exactly protecting anyone either. I mean,
I know we could turn around and say like, well, sure, what was he going to do? I'm sure the Nazis were forcing him to do stuff. At the end of the day, that man had more control than most people in society at the time. He could have quit his job. He actually could have quit his job. There's a
little of story, of history, like even within Germany at the time, where there was resistance groups to the Nazi like regime, and if you chose to be complicit rather than do that, I mean, then you need to cop flack for that at the end of the day.
Yeah. So the children were under T4, as it was called. The children then were like basically bussed off to this particular children's hospital. Autistic children included, childhood schizophrenia, or whatever we want to call it. Just things like epilepsy, of course, which is very common with autistic children.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, eventually it was just, so they started with the most extreme cases, but eventually it was just kids that were deemed annoying, that were that were added to the list as such.
And I mean, all kids are annoying.
Yeah. Especially you as a kid.
I was dead now.
I hope your mum is listening to this. Philip's mum, if you're watching or listening, please leave a comment below.
She does not know how to comment on.
I will send her the link to this.
Dude, go ahead. She's in her 70s. She does not know how to comment.
She's in her 70s, is she?
Yeah, she's 71 today.
Jesus. Oh yeah, you said her birthday's today. Yeah. Happy birthday to Philip's mum. This is a really odd episode to wish your mum happy birthday.
Especially because it's pre-recorded. It's not going to come out on her birthday. That is true.
Happy birthday in the past.
Yeah. But this is why I'm late going around to the house, ma'am, today.
He's here doing this.
He's here doing this.
So yeah, obviously this child euthanasia program then, as we said, it became fertile ground for kind of medical research. And it was, I believe, more than 200,000 disabled children and adults were officially murdered. Obviously, there was thousands more, and what would be deemed as wild acts. I mean, how do you? A lot of families were told natural causes. Found out later it was different, death things, and like, or they saw their loved ones later, and they were completely emaciated. They were starved. They might have died of something eventually at the end, but they were also starved, and they were poked and prodded, and there was a lot of this going on. So there was obviously official deaths, and then there was non-official deaths. So we're talking fucking massive, massive numbers. And like something like that again, obviously, disabled people in general, but I think particularly in the autistic community, knowing kind of where we've came from in our history can be like, it can be a big big daunting traumatizing thing. And that's why, like, I said at the start, big trigger warning for anyone that doesn't know this about our history. And that is why, like, I think a lot of autistic adults are trying to come at being autistic now with like getting rid of our self-ableism, unmasking, and showing pride, because we're trying to show pride for the younger autistic people, that are growing up now, or for the parents even of autistic children that are struggling. And it's like, do you know what? Things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
Things are just going to be okay. We don't need to be murdered. Thanks.
Yeah.
Like when we say never again, we mean never fucking again, please.
Yeah.
And look, again, I think a big, massive part of this, and I will keep repeating this, is that we do not listen to one expert. There is no one expert on autism. There's particularly no expert on autism if they're not fucking autistic.
Yeah.
Like, let's be realistic here. Autistic adults now exist. We know autistic adults exist. We've known for a long time that autistic adults exist. Why aren't we listening to our lived experiences when it comes to things like ABA, when it comes to how to treat us better, when it comes to how to communicate with us? I don't understand why, like, there's still such a push against us when we speak out in public, and whether it's experts, or parents of autistic kids, we get a real pushback for voicing our opinion on being autistic. I do feel like our opinion is the less wanted in society. I don't know if you feel that.
Oh, definitely. Like, yeah. Like we're treated, like, we're still treated as sort of like a problem. Like we're treated as like like, and it's just, and it does feed into, I think, how the wider disabled community is treated as well. Is that it's like the idea of accommodating people is treated as like a chore.
Yeah.
It's treated as like, this is a headache that we have to do this. That, like that they're doing a favor for us in a way, rather than just being like, we all live in this society together. We're all we're all part of this, and we should all be able to have have a voice, and and seeing a group of people's existence in society, that contributes by them being there, and not well, it's only considered contributing if you're, again, you're contributing specifically to
capitalism.
To capitalism, like.
But like, even those groups of people that, like, teachers or educators or psychologists or psychiatrists or anything, even though the people that will listen to autistic experts or listen to parents of autistic children, I still find that there's a pushback against listening to us, the ones with the actual fucking lived experience. The autistic person who is in their 40s or 50s, who has lived their entire life as an autistic person, on what is harmful, what has been helpful, what is educational. Like, there's still this pushback. I do think times are changing very, very, very slowly, but they are changing.
Times are changing, and like, I think they're changing. I don't think they're changing the same for all autistic people.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a autistic person that masks well, it's like, sure, you're great.
Yeah.
You don't even seem autistic, kind of thing. And, which is, thank you. I'm in constant pain from masking. It's a real problem. But they're not changing for autistic people who have higher support needs, I don't think.
Yeah.
They're still pathologized a lot more and treated as something that needs to be fixed or cured or whatever.
Yeah. Just go back to say that I know we kind of touched on this earlier. Obviously, there was pockets of resistance at the time. There was a group, the University of Munich group, the White Rose Resistance. So there was opportunities if Hans Etzbergs really wanted to. If he was like, no, I'm actually like there's this vibe that he was some kind of double agent and he was actually there for the kids. I mean, if there would be some evidence then that he was involved in any of the resistance, and there's zero. I have not seen any evidence.
You might say if he was really against it, he could have taken a more hands-on approach.
Oh my God, shut up.
That was brilliant. I'm sorry, that was dead funny.
Awful. Yeah, and as I said earlier, like evidence does actually suggest that he was on the committee of the 7 doctors who decided which children would go off to die, basically. So, yeah, not a great person. By the time he filed his thesis in 1943, he knew that thousands of children that he had spoke about were murdered. So I think that just says a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we cannot say that he didn't, even if he had good intentions going in to work with children. Yeah, I feel as an autistic person a little bit used. I think it's ridiculous.
Also, are we really expect to believe he was like proper grief stricken by all this? Like,
yeah,
I mean, fuck off. Like,
he was later sent to the front lines as they needed more doctors there, apparently. And while he was in Croatia, I think the hospital was targeted by Allied bombs. So, he survived the war. Yeah. His research was mostly lost for decades. Now, this is like the interesting part. I'll get more into that later about like, well, why was it lost for decades? I think we can go like, oh, well, the Nazis, all the stuff was lost. Or did he purposely want all his stuff to be lost?
See, I was just going to say that. I was just going to say that because like there was
he was still alive. Why wasn't he talking about autism anymore?
Like there was a big thing post, like as the Nazi regime was falling, even within like the concentration camps, that they were ramping up how many people they were killing because they were trying to get rid of as much evidence as possible and get rid of the witnesses essentially. So,
and look, we have to believe
be consistent with that.
We have to believe that people at the time that were going along with the Nazi regime and everything else, they would believe this is probably the way the world's going to be forever. That there wouldn't be an after where you'd have to feel guilty about or hide from. Like, so, I would well believe.
They were so up their own fucking holes, like that they believed in their own superiority so much that they thought they were going to fucking rule the world for the rest of the time. Like,
but even people, I'm sure, that weren't in agreement with them but feared them, and were still like just around at the time, I'm sure also believed that there was probably very little chance of getting out of this system. So like, yeah, there probably was no at some stage during all of this, I'm sure a lot of society just felt that there was no going back, there was no getting out of this, like, so to go on then, talk a little more about Leo Kanner. You might have heard the term Kanner syndrome. So like,
I actually haven't heard the term Kanner syndrome.
Okay, I vaguely heard of it. So again, we have like, no one is able to come up with a fucking like terminology. So again, autistic behavior was used as this very like big open-ended kind of like, it was just a term, already existed, just a term, and eventually that's what it came known as, because like I don't think people wanted to put their name on it at all, I guess. I'm not really like sure, but again, it was this whole idea of childhood schizophrenia, but also like, again, this other doctor noticing certain traits. So Kanner was born in Ukraine. Some historians actually believe that his father might have been autistic, and again, we see this with a lot of like historical figures, because we're like, we can notice traits in them now. So that's interesting. Kanner wanted to make apparently big changes socially, studied medicine, he was drafted to the army, yada yada. Later got out and he married, career in cardiology, got a position in the US, psychiatric assistant. He moved around and he eventually settled and worked in a hospital. So he was noting, so Kanner was kind of again, there was like lots of positives to him. People kind of noted that like he seemed to be quite an empathetic person. I think for doctors, especially at the time, he had noted that like, I think there was a disabled volunteer working in the hospital, and the disabled person was very gentle with the patients and respectful and listening to stories of their childhood and a very humanistic approach.
Yeah.
And obviously that seems very obvious now, but obviously like it was not, again, at the time. So Canner kind of took ideas from that, and he was like, yeah, that's a good idea. Ask patients about their family, get to actually know them, treat them as fucking human. What?
Wild.
Well, yeah.
Wild.
And then look for the root of the inflictions rather than trying to just not endless questionnaires and not seeing people as people at the end of the day. So there was apparently he was kind of noted for this very humanistic approach and things that just were not done at the time. Like on Christmas Eve, he proposed the non-violent patients should not be constrained in straitjackets, which seems very basic, but at the time the hospital were like, whoa, calm down. This is all a little too much. So there was a lot of humane plans that he basically introduced into this hospital, and I'm sure the patients were very, very grateful of it. It seemed like he was a very nice person. Again, there's good and bad in both of these men, as we know. No one's saints, no one's pure evil. The whole idea of refrigerator parent, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard before, kind of blaming autism on mothers in particular, but parents in general, it kind of was noted to be with him, but then there's some debate over that. I don't know if Canner just briefly believed in refrigerator parent idea, the mother thing, but I do know that he specifically at some stage wrote about how he didn't believe that. So again, changing ideas is absolutely allowed. So there is kind of dispute over that. Maybe he believed it at one stage, and it would have been very common notion to believe at the time anyway. Blame mothers for everything. Sure, why not? And it was this kind of cold refrigerator parent kind of idea that causes autism, kind of that traumatic effect on the child. So he flew up the ranks really, was doing very well in his career. He set up a child behavior clinic, or he helped set it up. And he was, he's encouraged to write a book on child psychiatry, a very well-known book, and was absolutely praised, kind of combining pediatrics and psychiatry together. That was published in 1935. I think it was just called Child Psychiatry. But well praised at the time. Nothing like that was really being done, obviously. So he became very well known, very well liked. He maybe though, I think again, was not the voice of the voiceless, as I think some would like to call him. There was still some dark sides to him. He did seem to agree with the idea of sterilizing disabled people, stuff like that. So it's a sign of the times. But he's definitely not an innocent bystander either. I don't think we can go as far as saying that he saw disabled people as equal to non-disabled people at the end of the day, or that especially in psychiatric services, I don't think that's the way he saw people.
He's still clearly pathologizing, even if he's more humane in some ways than other.
So he was personally affected by the rise of the Nazis. Some of his family were killed. So he, like most people at the time, personally affected by that. What was interesting is that while he was doing all of his work at the same time that Hans was, there's nothing to really say that either of them knew about each other. So again, no one created autism, but they were both noticing certain traits within patients, and young patients in particular. And we don't know if it's just coincidental, but there was at least one, I think there was two people. There was one person that ended up working in his clinic that had came from Hans's clinic. Now, I don't understand, though, what this was obviously discovered in recent years. They were like, wait a minute, someone that was quite high up working in Hans Asperger's clinic later fled and then worked at around, shortly after was working in his clinic, in Canner's clinic. Then how... But they didn't seem to know. That could be a coincidence, or did Canner know? Did he know anything about Asperger's work? We don't know. We just actually don't fucking know. So I think that's really interesting.
That is interesting. I mean,
I think there was two. There was definitely one main kind of higher person, and I think there was another person that ended up being in the clinic as well.
It seems unlikely to me for some reason that they didn't know. I know it's been, you found it difficult to find a connection, but it seems unlikely that they weren't aware of each other.
Yeah, I mean, I could totally understand how that could happen, especially without the internet or worldwide news or the given time that it was in. There was turmoil and everything.
But it's also in these expert fields, they're very small circles. that
Yeah.
exist. Do you know that kind of way?
Yes.
So it's like,
But then but that's what I mean from.
it's kind of like how every lefty activist in Ireland, we all fucking know each other because there's so few of us. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah. But I'm also just interested in, like, literally 2 people moved into his clinic and they were like, oh, we actually did similar work on this before. Like, that's kind of interesting. I understand that they mightn't have known, maybe they didn't know that Asperger was writing a paper that was going to be published, if that makes sense. But they would have known the children and the trade. I don't know. I'm not really 100% sure. If anyone has ideas in the comments, please let us know. That is something I it could probably research more, but I kind of just got a bit lost down that rabbit hole as such. Like, but I'm not sure what that was. Something fell. Actually, can't tell what it was. I think it's okay, hopefully.
The ghosts of Asperger's and Canada are coming after us right
now. So yeah, again, Canner debated over a working name. Still nothing. We're still just called nothing. The similar traits, they could totally pick apart that this was a thing like. And that it wasn't just childhood schizophrenia or psychosis, but there was something else broader happening, I guess. The criteria was just, there was much dispute, obviously, over criteria. Just wondering, did I talk about when they actually... I'm going to skip ahead a bit in my notes because I want to talk, as I said, Canner released his paper in 1943. Autistic disturbances of affective contact, a paper based on about 11 children, kind of bringing autism to the world is how it was seen. 4 months later, Asperger submitted his thesis when it wasn't published or didn't go to print until like about a year after that. And by the time that happened, his clinic was in ruins from the war. Was no longer existing, basically. So
right.
Yeah, Asperger's Children's Clinic was just no more. So the timeline is incredible. Do you know, it's but more, as we've just kind of said, Asperger's never, very rarely spoke about autism ever again. You know, he survived the war. He rarely spoke about autism again. Like, personally, I think, and many think, that's a bit strange. I mean, do you go from something that was your life, it's just go, oh, I'm just going to work on other stuff now, and rarely ever speak about this again? It's just a massive thing. And to me, I know that a lot of people probably think like, oh, well, because of like his paper getting released. And it was the case that like a lot of people didn't want to read German papers, papers coming out of Germany. I get that after the Nazis. Like, I understand that aspect of it. And like, that's why it was lost to time. And I was like, yes, but the man also did it still exist and wasn't publicizing his findings or himself. You know what I mean? There was no further work done on that. He was just like, I'm just going to concentrate on other things now. And I think like that's a little coincidental. I think that he took the opportunity to bury his own work himself, really. You know? So,
which, is he hiding evidence of his involvement?
I think that's my point, really. But I think to note as well, kind of, I do like the traits that I think Canner had kind of pinpointed as well. Still no formal diagnostic term, fair enough, whatever. Like, but number 1 was autistic loneliness, and number 2, like, fear of change and surprise. So you could like described as like a need for sameness, which I think really speaks lots of volumes today. Like, that's still like, oh, and I love the simplicity of it. I know there's other autistic traits, and there's a lot more that we could go into and say. I love the idea of autistic loneliness. I was going to say, I don't love the idea of autistic loneliness. And I know that they mean more that like autistic children have their own world, internal world, and that we go into our own internal world with children, and that it's hard to communicate with us, and that we don't communicate with the outside world. And I know that they mean it from that point of view, but as an autistic person, to me, it means a lot more, I guess, because there is an autistic loneliness, and we do have these days in 2026, I think, we talk about cures and things that are going to help autistic people. There's no cure, first of all, and there shouldn't be a cure because that's eugenics and that will kill us. But in talking about what will help autistic people, I think we need to consider what will help autistic loneliness. and that is community. And like obviously that's why we
Yeah.
have the community group set up, because I think particularly for autistic adults, you need other autistic adults. You need people that understand your way of communication.
Yeah. I think part of it is
Um,
even just. I think a lot of people have too simplistic an understanding of loneliness as well, and that
yeah,
they see it as a black and white. Oh well, you're around people or you're on your own. Whereas it's more complex than that. You can feel lonely while being around people, and you can feel perfectly fine with being on your own. I think you need to have a very nuanced understanding of
yeah,
loneliness itself to even understand autistic loneliness as well.
yeah. And at that stage, they'd also noted that epilepsy was a possible comorbidity. So, you know, I mean, there was positives to come out
Mm.
of these two jackasses, like whatever the case may be. There was some
Two
positives there, like
jackasses.
things that we know now that we might not
Mm.
have known, even though horrific things also occurred. Yeah, so later, as most people probably know the term Asperger's syndrome, because later lower level support needs autistic kids were said to have Asperger's syndrome, and other kids were just autistic. And you know, we've talked about kind of the debate around those titles being harmful, because we're all autistic people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think some people view splitting autism as necessary. If you're autistic and you've got commentary on that, let us know below. I do think maybe in schools, I know that schools still tend to use the numbers, or at least the school reports from autistic clinicians will, like, you know, use like 1, 2, or 3 levels for autism, which
Yeah.
I can understand from a school point of view, and that's fine. Like I noticed that in my daughter's report, but it wasn't something the psychologist did mention to us what her numbers were, because they were like, it's not really important. It's only important to the school, and it is a bit of an outdated. Even that is still
It's
kind of
outdated.
outdated.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can understand it from to note again that your support needs change throughout your lifetime.
Yeah.
And that is why even my 5-year-old daughter is going to need to be reassessed in a few years, because she needs to have her support needs looked at again, because she's a human. Because we're human beings and we change and we adapt.
Yeah, we grow and change, and yeah, again, and I think looking at it as it needs to be a needs assessment, not you know,
Yeah.
like I don't even like referring to it as a diagnosis. You know, I like to think that I'm certified autistic,
Certified.
Yeah.
Classified.
classified. Yeah.
Just like it's got the word classy in there.
Yeah,
So yeah, there is some debate even these days around should we be using Asperger's syndrome? Should we have different types of autism? And look, it's not just the problematic background of the man's name that we looked at. Like, as I said, there's this whole idea of Aspie supremacy, and I, for one, am glad that we're getting out of that phase, because I can see how people would fall into that trap. I think I had a lot of self-ableism, and I felt like, oh, I'm not like the other autistics, and I hate
and
myself
trust
for that
me,
now.
she is.
But you know what I mean? It's very easy to fall into that trap without realizing that you're actually being a bit gross and ableist.
Yeah.
You know, and again, because I was like just treated differently and I was seen differently. But then
And I think
that leads to higher masking.
There's an aspect of that it's almost like, I think, seeking validation from the neurotypical world in that sense, because you're like, oh
yeah. And we don't want that, because that's what everyone did with the fucking Nazis, and look what happened there. So, you know, let's get away from that.
Don't be a Nazi.
Yeah, don't be a Nazi.
It's our new rule.
But there's a lot of it's our old rule.
Unfortunately, feels like a new
I'm actually wearing my
new rule today, the way the world's going. But yeah.
But for the podcast, it's our old rule.
Oh yeah,
we always say it on the podcast, and even in the group as well. In the group, that's like our number one rule is like, please no Nazis.
Oh yeah, it's like the only criteria to be in our group is be autistic and don't be a Nazi. That's it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think obviously some parents have a different idea of that. Obviously, a lot of the commentary I see online is that parents liked the idea of Asperger's, but I suppose, look, I guess that if your child is being called less sick, I can see how you might see that as a positive, even though it's not sick. I can also see that there's some parents that are afraid that if their child isn't seen as super autistic, then they're not going to get the support needs in place. Where our point is that we're all autistic, and all autistic need the support needs that they need. It's not a way for the government to take away from that. And I know that change can be scary, and often families do see it like that. is this the government trying to trick us and take away support needs and services? So I
Which
do
are,
understand that as well.
certainly our government has form that kind of thing.
Yes,
Like
yes, absolutely.
particularly the current government certainly has a,
So if in doubt, listen to autistic adults. We
yeah.
hopefully know in some way that what we're talking about.
Mm.
So I do think the changes overall in 2013 to the DSM-5 were good. Adding like this notion of a broader spectrum. Obviously, I do not love the term ASD, autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah,
We're not disordered, and I do think even
it's just
though
gone back into that
yeah,
pathology fucking shit. Like,
yeah, and even though it's clinically there in the DSM-5, I do see that there's a lot of doctors, and clinicians will not generally use ASD. Sometimes they have to in reports, but when you're talking to them, they don't, and they shouldn't be. I do think that's the one thing. Like, I know we're slagging off the Americans earlier for being behind and still loving ABA, but in this country, in Ireland, like, we are behind, and we use ASD within the HSE, use it constantly.
Yeah, well, the HSE
The
are,
HSE use it.
yeah.
So we are behind in that respect. We're still using the ASD, and I do understand because it's in the fucking stupid DSM-5. But there you go. Like, it's, to kind of go back to this whole podcast is about our community and our culture, and that is a thing. I think we need to understand that as well. When, like, you're talking on TV, you're very much, these aren't hypothetical people you're talking about. These aren't hypothetical situations. We have our own communication.
Yeah.
Like, neurotypical people might struggle to communicate with us, but we struggle to communicate with neurotypical people. We have our own communication. We have our own understanding, and we understand each other generally quite well as autistic people. So I think that is what I really want to get across to neurotypical people. Whether you know autistic people or you don't know autistic people, whether you're working in the school or working anywhere, just in society in general, is that we are our own community. We're our subculture, we're our communities, and to us it isn't confusing. Like, I think it's not like we're not that baffling, we're not a missing puzzle piece to us. We understand the other people in our communities, we understand what they're saying, and there's no communication difference there at all. And it's wild that, like, our difference to neurotypical is so pathologized, because, like, when you question that, why is it not the other way around? It could easily be that we just are pathologizing neurotypicals.
I do it all the time.
You do indeed. Well, you're not a doctor, so it doesn't count.
Counts for me.
Because at the end of the day, autism is just a different neurotype. That is all. Sometimes, yes, it can be disabling, absolutely. Sometimes a lot of autistic people can have secondary conditions like physical disabilities, like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I also have epilepsy, like a lot of autistic people have. A lot of autistic people have cognitive development issues as well. Not everyone, but some do. Either way, that does not make us less.
No.
It just we're still, even with the added on disabilities that some of us have, we are still just a different neurotype. And I think it's absolutely fascinating that we are the disordered ones when it could so easily have been neurotypicals, and I'm not really sure how it isn't, or what. Like, it's interesting.
It's how society has been structured. It's been structured in a neurotypical way, so therefore, we're like, as you said, other, or we've just been treated like we're.
Yeah, but I think it's also a good point to just get across to the neurotypical people that kind of listening in, that it could have very easily been the other way. Yeah. And you would have these lived experiences that we have. And also, like, I know we've discussed this on another episode, kind of when we're talking about, I think it was when we were talking masking and stuff, there's this whole idea of the double empathy problem, because a neurotypical person cannot understand the way an autistic person is communicating. But likewise, the double empathy problem speaks about how the autistic person can't understand, or the neurodivergent person can't understand how the neurotypical person is communicating. Like, we have to learn your language and your way of being, but often neurotypicals don't have to learn our language or our way of being. We just have to do your language. So it's like, you speak Russian, I speak French, but I constantly have to speak Russian to you rather than you learn any French.
Yeah.
Even though we live in a country that's like 50% Russian speaking, 50% French, whatever, like. And why is the neurotypical society not meeting the neurodivergent society halfway? And that's what the double empathy problem discusses that it's not a one person issue, it's not a one group issue, it's an issue of the two groups. We
Yeah.
can't understand you, you can't understand us, yet it's always us that has to learn and has to adapt and has to change.
Those are like we're expected to be the ones to make the accommodations for the rest
Yeah.
of yeah.
Yeah. So again, autism is a neurotype. Nothing more, nothing less. And the medical model, it's really led to this obsession with finding the cause of autism, and because of that, the cure of autism. And obviously, I use that phrase loosely because there is no cure. And at times that can be really funny. You know, I know that we laugh at like American politicians and stuff coming out and being absolutely fucking ridiculous and saying stupid things on TV, and it can be funny, and of course we laugh at that. At other times, I will be honest and say it's really, really, really difficult. And I think that's why so many of us are so compassionate about our like allies to migrants and trans community and such like that, because we know what it's like to have our lives debated and discussed to death on TV and on the media. Imagine what it, like, I don't know if people out there recognize that or realize that, because they're like, oh, autism, autistic kids aren't watching the news. Autistic adults are watching the news. Autistic adults who were once kids and told we're weird and doing everything wrong are now watching the TV as you debate our lives. Because when we talk about cure, it all comes back to eradicating us. There is no cure. It comes back to eugenics. It comes back to Nazi Germany. And I want to say times have changed, but you know, seeing horrible comments publicly, even on social media.
Well, yeah,
you see
just look
what
what's happening
really think
in like what's happening in America is to throw back to that with RFK Jr. saying that he can cure autism, and you know, if mothers, is it fucking paracetamol or something like that?
Yes, yeah, it was
Stop
paracetamol. Was
that's the cause of it, like,
yeah.
You know, a man who has literal brainworms.
Yeah.
So that is a return to that, like, pretty fucking Nazi idea of,
and it's why it's so important for the autistic community to recognize our history, to not be ashamed or embarrassed about it, but to really, really fucking delve into it. And like, when we say never again, we're not just saying it for this hypothetical community. Obviously, we will always say it for other communities. We'll always say it for Jewish people, for anyone going through that, we'll always say never again. But we have to recognize that we're also saying it for disability communities. We're also saying it for autistic communities that we literally belong in. And we cannot run with this narrative and allow things to happen these days when we come from that. Like, that's our history that we're speaking of. That is literally our culture, our history, more so than most people. Obviously all of our ancestors were around at that, you know what I mean? But we were directly targeted for who we are.
Yeah.
And we are still being targeted now. And that is why it's ever more important for our community to not be divided, for autistic types to not be divided, because we don't need that. There is no such thing as Aspie supremacy.
And it's just bringing in, there's no such thing as anything supremacy. It's just bringing in that, like, that far right ideology into our own community, and that's the same ideology that wants to, you know, genocide us. So we should avoid doing that.
Yes, avoid death, please. Like, I firmly believe that my autism is me, and that there's no removing it. The way people talk about it, I think, is hilarious.
Yeah, and you can't, like, like, all of your brain is autistic, so there's not like, oh, this is my autism doing this, right? No, all of your brain is autistic, so it affects everything about you. Like.
To eradicate autism would mean death for us all.
Yeah,
it just would. There's no way to do that. And look, I don't want to get into the other side of this, where like we're being super positive and the narrative of like having superpowers or whatever. I don't want to get into that narrative either. Like, obviously, I do see some positives in being autistic, and I'll be lying if I said there are other times in life that I fucking struggled, especially when I was younger, like, especially wishing, like, I wish I was not like this. Obviously there's been times like that, but I do have to note that is a spin-off of how society has treated me. It's not like a realistic idea of me. It's how people have treated me, and I'm not going to let the Nazis win at the end of the day. Just keep that at the back of your mind. I think if you're autistic, like, and you're having that internal struggle of like, well, actually, I don't want to be like this.
Like I think the Scottish comedian Fern Brady, who's autistic, and she had I think the best analogy for it, and she was talking about how the whole both the superpower thing and then the like they can't just neurotypicals
Yeah.
can't just see us as
People.
as people like
Yeah.
and she's like you need to just see it as we've got a different operating system.
Yes.
It's like the difference between Android and iPhone. Just have a different operating system.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know like who made that. I've heard that multiple times.
Yeah, okay.
But it's very.
I don't know if
very,
she made
very
it first,
true.
but she's been by her saying
yeah.
it.
But yeah, and I do understand autistic people. There will be some autistic people listening to this who do find their life really, really tough and a big struggle, and they probably do wish they weren't autistic. And I don't want to belittle that either, because you deserve kindness and help and support and community, and that is really what we're focusing on, I think, here today. That's really the whole point of this discussion is knowing where you came from, where your mindset comes from currently.
Yeah. I think like there's it's I think part of having like a realistic balanced view of it is even having that within yourself to be like, okay, well look, there's various ways in which my life was easier if I wasn't autistic, but also there were various ways where my life would be fucking
boring
and bullshit if I fucking wasn't autistic. Like, so it's just.
I also think of the autistic friendships that I have like now as an adult that like I probably like you kind of accidentally get drawn to autistic people.
I think other people do. I think people meet you are not autistic and then hang out with you for a while. And you're like, I wasn't autistic. I wasn't actually born autistic.
I made you autistic.
I just hung out with Kitty too much. And then it's she infected me with autism.
That's actually what I'm doing in college. I'm not training to be a therapist at all. I'm just training to psychically autism people.
It's actually the real
hard course.
It's the real purpose of this podcast as well. It's for
I'm making everyone autistic just by listening to this right now.
Yeah, it's weaponization. This is like podcast is an autism bioweapon, essentially.
So culture today and how we're viewed as today. Obviously, we talked about a little bit the bad stuff in the news and everything else. With the rise of diagnosis, like there is obviously a better understanding of what autism is and how we're all very fucking different, especially from children to adults and everything else. Yeah, we're not going to be like your 5-year-old nephew if you're listening to this. Like, we'll get that a lot. Is there less shame these days? I think
I would say
more.
I think there's more awareness of the shame. So like, as in like. I think a lot of times shame in society can, if it can be normalized to a point that it goes unnoticed. Whereas I think there's still a lot of shame around it, but I do think it's at least noticed now, and acknowledged, which is usually the first step in it.
I think, as I said earlier, obviously we have community now. We have purposeful communities now, and I think that is one great thing about having the internet and being so online. Is that there's so many groups, there's so many autistic led groups, like obviously our community group, but just like awesome training,
all the weird
like
village autistics are finding each other.
Yes,
on the
exactly,
internet.
on the internet, exactly.
Quite a beautiful thing.
And there's lots of like businesses set up, like awesome training, and just like even just autistic OTs and people like that are going into certain autistic people going into certain industries to help other autistic people, and it's absolutely fucking amazing to see. So I think that's one good thing with kind of online culture aspect of it, is that we're there massively, like autistic people are really taking over the whole online thing, like but again there can be some bad community online around, when we see gross commentary by people, and it's just like, let us be, just let us fucking be. If you don't understand being autistic and you've got something weird to say about it, like I understand as well with the rise in diagnosis, there will be, as some people love to point out, that some people, whether accidental or on purpose, might be faking having autism. Like they might not know they're autistic, might wonder if they're autistic, and they might like push a narrative that they're autistic without having an official piece of paper. But even if they're faking and 100% incorrect, we get that with everything in life. We get that with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. We have fakers, and I use that term loosely. Some aren't real fakers, obviously, but we get people with every physical health condition, every issue, every condition that might go online for clout, and I do think the numbers are fucking minuscule, though. They're so inflated and ridiculous the way people talk about it. It's not an issue. It's not a main issue that our community has, and I just wish people would
and also
leave us be.
They'll go on to, perform a very, very specific like form of autism, and it's that like toxic positive superpower.
Yeah,
Aren't
yeah,
I great? Do you know what I mean?
yeah. And like just also to say again, I know we touched on this earlier, but diagnosis or identification, as a lot of people prefer to call it, is expensive. In this
Oh yeah,
country,
yeah, yeah,
as an adult, you have to pay for that,
yeah.
and it is expensive. A lot of people, even with children, have to pay for it because the HSE is obviously quite slow, and people, need the diagnosis for their children for
Yeah,
school and
there's a
everything
lot
else.
of like class privilege associated with your ability to get
Yes,
diagnosed. Yeah,
absolutely. So, look, if someone, I think at the end of the day, if someone's listening to this and you're thinking that you might be autistic, look, we're not gatekeeping. It's okay to call yourself autistic. And
it's
most
not.
people in the autism community, most
It's
adults in
not.
the autism community
Yeah.
do believe this, okay? Because at the end of
The
the
only real
day,
form of diagnosis is when we tell you that you're autistic. When you're
just
not
me and
like call
Philip,
yourself, just
exactly, in
as
particular, yeah.
we're
I think
we're
it's
starting
like,
an autism certification program. You have to get
this sounds very Nazi-ish. You're going to get a little stamp.
a little
No.
stamp. Yeah.
I look, like, jokes aside, I think most people that are thinking if they're autistic, they've been considering it for like 10, 20 years. Am I autistic? And they like have lots of people in there, maybe 70% of their fucking like family are already, like extended family are already diagnosed, or like are also have high autistic traits. You can just go ahead and assume at that stage. When we're talking about people who assume that they're probably autistic, we're literally talking about people who have been considering it for years. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like the
yeah.
majority of these people are those people, and it's because they know there's autistic people in their family and things like that. So look, if they're wrong, they're wrong. Who cares? Also, like, it's no big deal. It shouldn't be a big deal. If it's not a big deal to the community, it should be a big deal to people outside the community. Really,
Oh yeah, like
they're not taking from anyone. There's nothing there. Like there's no
yeah,
services anyway,
yeah.
especially for adults.
What services like, and even
It's
like
not cool to be autistic as well.
like
There's no clout here,
even if there
guys.
was like services like there probably wouldn't be any benefit to them.
No,
Like at the end of the day, after like
it would still be the
you know
HSE running it.
like yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of people that are purposely faking anything online. Um.
I
Uh.
know these people always get found out eventually.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Do you know
People
what I
that
mean?
were
Like
like big fakers for some. Like, they're
they'll
not
get
getting anything
exposed
from it though.
eventually.
At the
Like
end of the day.
yeah.
So from online to offline, yeah, the juicy stuff. Dating. You're an autistic man.
I am.
Yeah. What's it like in the dating pool? Now, I have obviously reasons to be going down this thought.
Um,
And do you disclose that you're autistic when you're dating?
it comes up in conversation. I'll say it like yeah. I don't like. It's not like my opening line, but
Yeah.
if we're chatting like and it kind
You
of
never use it as like a, I don't know, well, unless in someone else. If the girl's autistic, like, and girl, what age am I?
oh if they put like
Woman,
if
the
someone
woman.
like there's a woman who's put like who has that they're neurodivergent somewhere or thing, I'll be like
Then
oh
you'll,
yeah yeah
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I don't
Like,
advertise my thing, but if it comes up,
yeah,
you know, national conversation, I'll say like um uh in terms of the response I get, I have been ghosted once to
really,
find out. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
really,
I would say that's the minority.
right,
Like, but it has happened.
yeah,
Um, I would say most people like because if you've built up enough of a rapport with someone that when you find you're autistic, they don't just tend to not really care then
yeah.
because you know what I mean. You build up
In
rapport.
in this day and
You're
age,
enjoying the conversations or
so
whatever
in
you're
this day and
having. So
age,
it's
at
like
least people your age are mostly open
mostly
to the
open, but
idea to
yeah, yeah,
dating
yeah,
an autistic
yeah,
adult. Like, okay,
yeah.
that's good. And I
Um,
ask because, like,
and I don't
obviously
know if they
not.
would have been say if they weren't already in a conversation with someone and it was like they were enjoying that
Yes.
conversation and then found out kind of thing.
Have you ever had any weird dates where like you thought it was going bad because they were like, "I'll give this guy a chance," even though but they still were weird about you being autistic? Do you think on dates? No, you've never
No,
had that with
no,
anyone
never
you've met.
really. No,
That's
that's
brilliant.
not.
That's
I
really good.
never.
Like,
Yeah. No, I'd say it's different for women because the dating scene in general is obviously
yeah,
always
and
significantly worse.
that is what we're going to slide into now. That's
Okay.
kind of, yeah, that's what I was going to lead into. So there's this like whole new scene in this day and age of dating, and we've kind of went from it. I'm sure there was a lot of negativity. It probably is still in certain spaces, or assumptions made about autistic people, obviously, and that's going to roll over to the dating scene. Why wouldn't it? Of course it is. And we want to think everyone's like really cool and new age and deadly these days, but we know that's never the case in any part of society. But something that I think has been really noticed, and I've seen a few articles about it even, if I find any, I will also link them in the citations. But I've discussed this with autistic women. Now, I'm married myself years, so I haven't been in the dating pool for a long time, obviously. Um, but to just talk a little about, I suppose, how there's this certain type of woman. Now, we've mentioned it in the title, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this Manic Pixie Dream Girl idea. And this actually comes from movies. It's nothing new. It's an old kind of character type in films.
Yeah, it would have been. I think it would have been previously called kind of like quirky, or
it's more than that, though. Yes, because you can have a quirky lead female character who is purposeful.
Yeah.
And I think actually it does a disservice because there's been so many past lead characters, female characters, that weren't meant to be or weren't written like the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, but people now associate that as a broader sense, and they call all female leads that are slightly quirky Manic Pixie Dream Girl. And it is terrible because it's ruined some films now, where it's like, actually, no, if you look at that, like, we're just calling everyone this type of character, if that makes sense. So to go back to what kind of this kind of character is, for those of you that have never heard of it, it's long known in films. I do think it got very popular in the 90s and early 2000s, but it was even long before that. It would have been noted. If you look back in old films, you can kind of see the kind of misogynistic kind of characterization of women. So in a lot of these films, there'd be a main man. You know, there'd be the main role would be a man, and then there would be a woman in it that might be a slight romantic interest. So usually, like, this woman is, I think they end up being kind of infantilized, like infantilized. Oh my god, I can never say that word. Infantilized, but also the seen as childish as well.
That's what infantilized.
Infantilized.
Yeah.
Is it?
That's
Okay.
what infantilized is.
Yes.
What else are you trying to say?
I don't know. But I was going to say I see it as both that, but in certain aspects sexualized as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely both. Yeah,
which is creepy when you think of it that way, because sometimes
it's incredibly
usually,
creepy,
but it's usually both within the same character.
Yeah, it's incredibly creepy.
Yeah,
but that's also like, unfortunately.
I think that's the worst.
Common.
That's the worst part of it, and it can, like, even if you've never heard this term now, I'll say it like what this woman is, and you'll probably go, oh my god, and realize, and then be totally creeped out. So I'm sorry if this ruins any films for anyone watching. But it's not a new phenomenon, as I said, like, and it's an old idea, and it's this kind of thing of like a woman being there for just a man, just to build up the man's character within a show or within a film. So it's usually that the woman has no personality or needs, or the needs that she does have are still like cute and like not disturbing or anything, or not real. Or she's like, no, it's okay, I'm just here for you. And there is a quirkiness, and they're an interesting like accessory almost in an actual real person. They're usually like ditzy and confused. They have like quirky, but with taste of like their fashion, their music, their hobbies, all that kind of thing. They probably have like colored hair. They're a little bit interesting. And like, I know this kind of sounds like, oh, these sound like good things, these sound like good traits. It's not, though. It's not flattering. It is actually belittling. So this isn't like just like a film where it has like an interesting, quirky head character that happens to be a female. This is just there to build up the man's character.
They're a caricature rather than
it's a dream idea to these men. So usually these films are like ones, one that came to mind earlier was Garden State, where this, like, a man will be going through something in life. If you Google it, you'll know it. I'd say but it's like, it's the same idea all the time. It's usually like a man is going through something, and it's like quite a boring man, maybe like he's a bit basic, and this woman's just like, hey, I'm doing literally nothing better with my day, so I'm going to come and try and slightly come on to you, but make you go on an exciting adventure, like, and the whole film is just about how this woman changes this man's life. And it's like, dude, just go to fucking therapy. Oh my god. And you can tell that a man probably wrote this film. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. And it's like, we're just these cute, ditzy, confused little life-saving women, and And it's like kind of this whimsical, like wild whimsical women, I guess. Do you know, kind of hippies
Wild
sometimes.
whimsical women. That's a good
Whimsical,
approach.
well,
Wild whimsical
yeah, they're
women.
usually kind of hippies. They're like free and whatever, and then they try
Oh
to
yeah,
teach the
definitely
man to be
hippie-ish and
free.
definitely like there's always like arty and like
Yeah.
there's like text
And
box things.
when I was looking a bit into this, because obviously I know a lot myself from seeing it and seeing it in real life, and that was the next point I'm going to make, because obviously this is a thing from films. But like, and one thing that I like only realized earlier was that in these films, the woman, she could be hot as fuck. She's always coming on to the guy, and the guy's like, I don't know. Do you know, in the
Yeah, yeah,
beginning,
yeah. And he's always
got
like,
work. I'm a mortgage broker. I forgot
and it's
to go
always
to
like
work now.
it's
Of
and
my
it
dad's funeral.
like it's a very Hollywood thing that the hero of every story is always an incredibly mediocre white man. Is
Yeah,
the
yeah. Whereas you think she would be the main character, but she's not, and she has no needs. She
yeah,
has even her problems are just kind of quirky and interesting. They're not
yeah,
real
yeah,
problems. Like she's not facing anything. She is there for the man 100%.
yeah, yeah.
And it's just fucking gross misogyny. And this isn't to take away from all female leads. You know, I don't want us to overuse this terminology, because it did get overused, and then it reflected badly in some films that probably didn't deserve it. I get that. But what I want to talk about, how this has now become a thing in real life. So I think years of these stupid fucking films have really got into men's head. And when you talk to autistic women these days, they see it all over the dating apps. Where, like, fair enough if you're an autistic man, I think, and if you're putting up going, I'm autistic, would like to meet an autistic woman, or would like to meet a neurodivergent woman. Men are now putting up that they would like to meet. And I do think that autistic women are always sexualized, and we're not meant to be the pixie dream girl, but we are. When you think of those characters, think of autistic traits, and then think of those characters in those films.
Yeah, yeah.
They're autistic as fuck.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think the writers realize that, and I don't think the men. I think for years, men that like desired these women rather than anything to not go to fucking therapy, you cheapskate pricks. But like, men did seek after the real notion of these women from films, and I think they didn't realize at first, oh wait, these women are just autistic and actually have really high support needs and will have behavioral issues and will have lots of problems that you have to deal with in a real life situation. But over the last few years, men have started to fucking realize this, and they are now putting in dating apps. They want someone with a little bit of autism. Now, they're clearly sometimes putting
I'll do like a
putting that,
little bit of autism, like
because they don't want, yeah,
Yeah.
they a lot of men are clever enough to know that there is autistic and then there's autistic, whatever.
But also, I think it's like
But that's their viewpoint. They don't know.
they
masking,
want that,
like,
but they don't want, like, you know, because almost every autistic person deals with like anxiety and depression and things like that. Because
as adults, we still have fucking meltdowns.
yeah, and they don't want that.
No, they absolutely do not want
They don't
being
want.
melted
They don't
down.
want an autistic woman who's gonna come with autistic challenges.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like really interesting, and that's what they mean by a little bit of autistic, like, because they don't understand what the fuck they're talking about or what the fuck they're saying.
Really, what they want
They
is
don't
the
see
one a
this as great.
neurotypical woman who will perform
Yeah,
autism
yeah.
for them.
And
Yeah.
they don't see it like how degrading it is that we're being sexualized like that. It's not flattering at all. And I don't know if everyone listening will even understand what I'm fucking trying to get across. And it's so interesting because I said I've been out of the dating pool for a long time, but I've read some articles that came up on this, and I've always saw with the Manic Pixie Dream Girls, I always saw that being an autistic character, to me, being autistic, I could always just feel that, if that makes sense. But now discussing it with friends that are single, women friends that are single and are on dating apps, they're like, yeah, no, it is like that. Even if the guys don't put it on their apps, when they find out they're autistic, they're a bit like, ooh, as if that's kind of hot and foreign.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
in the same way that black women often get sexualized, you know,
Yeah,
because it's just
there's like a
different.
There's like an exoticization.
Yes.
As well as,
yeah. So yeah, just to bring everything back around to how we are viewed these days, that's not a positive either. I don't
No.
want to be viewed as that. And what the interesting thing is that even though, like, as I said, I've been married for years, so I haven't been dating, I can definitely look back on my dating life and past relationships, and I can see that. I can see that has happened to me, where it's came into play, where a guy has just thought I was just like really kooky and quirky, and then like actually got to know me, and I was just like, and that's worse, like, because I couldn't really pinpoint it at the time, and I can pinpoint it now, where it was so annoying because I was like, not to be like loads of men were falling in love with me. No, the average amount of men were falling, like, not like loads, you know what I mean? But
Trail of broken
yeah,
hearts
absolutely.
behind her.
But I would find that a lot of people thought they loved me. I got that a lot. I got that a lot. I used to get that a lot, like, and not to belittle someone's feelings, but I'd have to turn around and go, no,
But
dude,
there's
you
an
don't.
element,
You
like,
don't,
because it's
though.
like, you don't know me.
Yes,
You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking
exactly.
about? You don't
You're
know
in
me.
love with the fantasy of me.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
what fantasy vibes I'm giving off. And it's only in the last couple of years I'm like, it's my fucking autism.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely
It's
think,
my autism.
yeah, I definitely think I've definitely had a bit of that where I've been like in the dating world. I've been like put on this
Women
weird,
kind of,
put me in this kind of pedestal, and I never
yeah,
really connected to the autism. Now you're saying it, I think
yeah.
it probably is
And
like.
I don't want to be in a pedestal because that's way
No,
too high. I can't
I'm a
reach that
fucking
fucking
dickhead.
pedestal.
Like,
I'm a human, treat me as such.
yeah,
And I know the sound, it almost sounds, I hate discussing this topic because it almost sounds big headed and it almost sounds like, well, shouldn't you want to be in the pedestal? No, I don't want friends or people that think they fancy me to have a unrealistic, dreamlike idea of me
Yeah.
that isn't based on me.
Yeah.
Then the guy or the girl never gets to actually get to know me.
yeah, yeah. Ultimately, like, you want to be seen,
Yeah.
and you're not. If someone has you on your pedestal, they're not seeing you. They're just
Yes.
they're just seeing this fantasy.
And it can, of course, happen in friendships as well. But yeah, definitely happens. And it was only, I think, when you said, because you said you've had that in relationship with the pedestal thing, and I was like, oh, that is the same as the Manic Pixie Dream Girl thing. And I didn't even know at the time that's really what I was experiencing, but I was giving those vibes because I am kind of quirky with my colored hair, whatever. I don't know what the fuck. Like, I was giving those autism vibes out, and guys were picking that up as like, this woman's wild, and I'm like, I'm not. I'm really fucking dull, by the way.
Yeah.
They were so disappointed, bless them. I've disappointed so many people in my life. But I went through a particular phase, I remember in my 20s, and like, again, not being big-headed, but loads of people were just like falling head over, and I was like, but you don't know me. You don't know me. And I was like, and that was okay. And I had nice conversations, and these weren't bad people by any means whatsoever. And I had lovely, friendly conversation where I just brought them back to earth and told them, you don't know me.
Yeah.
But I never understood, because I'm so fucking dull. I never understood why more than some other people, why some people and other people are treated differently. Some people are put up on that pedestal and other people aren't.
Yeah.
Especially being so dull. But it's the autism.
Yeah.
It's the autism.
Yeah.
So you are, in fact, also a Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
I knew it. I knew it.
So you know the type of films that I'm on about anyway, and the type of
I know. I don't know
style.
the particular movie you mentioned there. I don't think I know, but I do know that, like, and there's certain actors that often get like cast in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I must actually ask our audience listening, what movies or films or whatever, sorry, I'm Irish, saying movies sounds so fucking weird.
Yeah.
What films have you noticed that in?
Yeah. Pictures. What pictures?
What old pictures? Yeah,
I feel like, you know, like, for example, just like name an actor I think would get commonly cast. You know, like Zooey Deschanel.
Yes.
She's like typecast into that kind of
absolutely
role.
Like, yeah. So that is kind of all for the notes. I just kind of wanted to go back and again fucking say, can we stop calling non-autistics for advice on autistic people? Yeah, I'm not saying never. I'm not saying ever. I have definitely met some like good therapists who weren't like, say, autistic, but I would be happy with like advising an autistic friend went to see them as a therapist role, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that they're fucking useless, but they're the type of people that are learning from autistic people.
Yeah, it's
experts
like if
you're from autistic people.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that's what the very research itself should be.
Yeah.
Like, but also if you're gonna talk to them in a way like they're not like giving you the lived experience of an autistic person that they don't have. It's like,
yes,
you know what I mean? Like if they're a non-autistic parent of an autistic child, they can give you the experience of being the parent of an autistic child. Or if they're someone who works with autistic people, they can give you the experience of working with autistic people.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't be seeking you shouldn't understand what an autistic person is from a non-autistic person.
Yeah.
You know?
And we shouldn't be working off the advice or work from one person throughout history, especially if they're a fucking Nazi. Fuck Nazis.
Fuck Nazis. Yeah.
And learn from the past and never again. Know our culture, know our history. Don't let anyone eradicate our culture and history, because it's very much ours and our own. And if you're out there and you're autistic and you're lonely right now, please find community. If you can't find community, create it. Seek out autistic people. We're all online. We're somewhere online, I bet you.
Yeah.
I also wanted to finish with...
And also, if you're autistic and you've got friends, I mean, they're probably also autistic.
Yeah. You should...
They're very least almost definitely neurodivergent somewhere.
Yeah. Autistics love hanging out with people with ADHD. If you're autistic,
we
you've got
balance
at least
each other
one
well.
ADHD friend. If not your partner, if not your husband, wife, or your partner, then you've got a best friend with ADHD.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
It's a thing.
Yeah,
it's a thing. Just because, speaking of kind of like community, and I just happened to see this yesterday, and I thought it would be a great way to kind of end it. We're going to watch this, and I'll put it on screen. Does that make sense? So we're reacting to it. We're watching it. I don't know if you saw this. Awesome Training put it up yesterday. So I
don't. Probably not. I was out all day yesterday.
Oh, look at him! Look at the sociable autistic. I did stuff yesterday.
I was doing activism stuff.
Oh.
Yeah.
But, don't tell me it's private.
No, it's not private. No, we're doing a petition on just trying to stop the data center being built in Dota.
Oh, okay, okay. Good shout out.
Yeah, we'll put the link in the description.
Yeah, no, send me the link. Send me the link.
The link,
Okay, that's probably a few weeks, but I'll put up the link anyway. I'll put up the link and information about that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I meant to put it into the group anyway to try and get people to sign it.
Evelyn from Awesome Training posted this on the Awesome Training social media yesterday.
Right.
They're on Instagram. I'll put up the details, obviously. And she's just really speaking about autism masking and what it is and isn't. I assume I don't think she says, I assume this written piece is by herself. I just thought it was a fantastic way to describe, obviously she's talking about masking, but it's a fantastic way to describe our culture and kind of the nuances around how we're viewed and how we shouldn't be fucking viewed. And and going back to being pathologized and everything else. So thought it would be a great way to finish it. I'll make sure the volume is on here, and I will put it on screen now for everyone as well.
We do not mask our autism. We mask facets of ourselves deemed inappropriate by the colonizers. We mask oppressed elements of our humanity long forgotten by others. We mask what has been deemed as subhuman, animal, feral, other, not civilized, not proper, not like the colonizers. Our ways and the ways of others, very human ways, have been held with this disdain for centuries. Not because we are disordered, but because those who rule us segregate themselves from us, the savages. We do not mask our autism. We mask our humanness, our beauty and our flaws. Our wild cries, our rage, our joy, our uncontrolled sounds from deep within us, from the very bowels of our existence. We mask our unexpected movements, our honest answers, our curiosity and questioning, for curiosity and honesty have no merit for our rulers. We mask the suppressed, wild nature of humanity, the screams, the yelps, the ticks, the stims, the human things that have been deemed unhuman. Not like us. Not like those who dress oppression up as civility. We do not mask our autism. We mask what they seek to control through society and hierarchy. Our wildness, our humanity, our egalitarianism, each of these rejected as disorder, deficit, rude. We mask the things, the very things that make us human. Our deep, intense emotions, because emotions have no place in this stiff upper lip world of pomp and nonsense. We mask our ability to see through this pomp and nonsense so as not to upset those who cannot see through, but only see and admire, see and uphold, those who do not do the bidding of the rulers, jailing us and themselves with their looks, their tuts, their eye-rolling judgment. We do not mask our autism. We hide our humanity from a world that has forgotten what that is. Humanity replaced by nods and ceremonies and rituals that only seek to divide. We mask because it is too much for them to question their reality. We mask not just to protect ourselves, but to protect them too. For questioning is now unhuman. And they dare not do that, for to step outside of normality means they risk becoming us.
That's it. That's brilliant.
That's class.
I
Yeah.
loved it.
Did she write that herself?
I assume so. There was
Fuck.
there was nothing written on it, and yeah, I assume she's wrote that herself. If not, I'll find out and we'll if anyone wants to correct us on that. But I'm pretty positive. Fantastic.
That was amazing.
I think, I think it just really, whoever wrote it anyway, I think it really sums up what our community has endured.
Yeah, yeah.
And I hope we kind of got that point across today. So, anything else to add before I finish up?
Yeah, I suppose fuck Nazis.
Yeah.
Fuck ABA. If Keith Duffy wants to come on the podcast and debate us on it, we'll allow that.
We'll allow it.
We'll allow it. Yeah. And in general, Nerdtables, just stop being weird about us.
Yeah.
Just stop being weird about us.
Let us live.
We're just people. Stop being weird about us.
Yeah. Stop being weird about us. Absolutely brilliant. Get that on a t-shirt.
Stop being worried about it.
Yeah, although
I'm autistic. Don't be worried about it.
Yeah. Put that on your dating app.
Yeah, I'm autistic. Don't be worried about it.
Oh my god, I'm so old. Put that on your dating app, your profile.
You've never been on a dating app in your life, have you?
But they didn't exist.
They probably existed.
I'm
they probably
married
just
a
weren't
long time now. They didn't exist. No, they didn't. No, like
I said that something like Match.com.
Plenty of Fish was a website. There was no apps.
Okay, right. So okay. Well, online dating existed, but
very little. Back in my day, we had like you put an ad in the newspaper, and you'd phone up and you'd leave a reply.
That how you met Simon?
Yeah, that's how I met Simon. Through the newspaper.
Classified.
I'm 100. No, when I was a teenager, that was a thing. That was
put
a
in
literal
like
thing.
pina coladas. Can I go in the rain?
What?
That's that thing in the song. It's a dating thing in a newspaper.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not that old. I wouldn't know. Anyway, if you are on TikTok or Instagram, make sure to follow us on there, and you'll see some spoilers and some crack along the way. And if you like us, please follow, subscribe wherever you are watching this. Leave a comment. Until next time, stay hydrated, punch Nazis, and live beyond the script. Go gently, and we'll meet you back here. Bye.